All right, we're going live, it looks like.
Okay.
And are we getting some more people on too, Betsy?
Yeah, no. Here, there's Christine's back. All right, so we're on Facebook Live, and I'm Betsy Cunningham, and I'm co-chair of the Douglas County Democratic Party's Outreach and Events Committee. And these community forums are part of that effort to let people in Douglas County and beyond know what the Democratic Party is about and talk about important issues. And our host tonight is going to be Kevin Bell. And so I'll turn it over to Kevin.
Hi guys. Again, I'm Kevin Bell. I'm the vice chair of the local Democratic Party of Douglas County. Our host, of course, our technical is Betsy Cunningham, the one and only, and we have our guest today, Leonard Peltier, who is an ongoing Native rights activist, organizer of Peltier Justice, and a little sidebar into why this pertains to Douglas County. He's a Douglas County resident. Um, you know, this is, bigger than just Douglas County, though. I mean, we're focusing on it. We've passed a resolution, but this is about self-determination and self-reliance the country over. And so I'm glad for everybody stopping in, taking a look, and joining us tonight. Our first segment, our first couple of minutes is going to be spent. Chauncey, can you kind of give us the broad Cliff Notes version of what happened to Leonard and why he's in prison?
Well, Leonard's a Native American activist since 1976, and he's been wrongfully incarcerated for 48 years, which a lot of you have known. And he's been wrongfully convicted of the murder of 2 FBI agents, which there was never no evidence. He was tried on false testimonies. Witnesses that were forced to testify by the FBI. They're still withholding over 75,000 documents on Leonard's case today, and Leonard's still fighting for freedom. He's been in there for 48 years, and he's still struggling for freedom. His health ain't very good, and like a lot of people that don't know Leonard or ever heard of Leonard's case, they hear about it. And even people that don't know about him, they hear about all the rights violations and all the stuff that's happened to him over the years. And that's how a lot of people climb on board and support Leonard, because this is supposed to be a free country, innocent until proven guilty. And that ain't the deal with Leonard's case.
It's really just a travesty. I mean, this is, like you said, been going on for 4 decades now, and we're just waiting for the right person to do the right thing. Can you tell us about why you started organizing for, freeing your dad? Because I know you kind of got into it a little bit.
Yeah, when Leonard got when he was going to court in Fargo, North Dakota, I was just a young boy. I was probably 11, 12 years old, and he told me to go back to Oregon and live my life and try to stay out of a lot of this. And I tried that through my lifetime. The first 20 years were actually pretty rough, being Leonard's son, and other family members have told me horror stories too. Um, uh, like when they were the first incident I had, I was 11 years old, and they were trying Leonard in Canada to extradite him, and I was selling these newspapers on the corner. Leonard used to have a little newspaper to update on Native stuff and what was happening with him and stuff. And fortunately, that ran out of funds years ago, and so that stopped. And what I was doing was, a kid, I was standing on the corner selling these papers, and I noticed these guys over here in an unmarked car watching me in suits. and I seen him, and I zigzagged around a couple blocks, and I had went to selling newspapers again. I looked over there again, and then they were again. So this happened to me about 3 times. Finally, the third time, I went back to the courthouse, and they were searching everybody as they went into the courthouse. And when I went in to get searched, um, one of the agents that was following me that day, he went in there and told the guards that he had this, and he searched me, and I remember this like it was yesterday. I was like 11 years old, and he had my hand twisted behind my back, and he told me, he says, "I'm going to see that your murdering dad never walks free." And of course, I was just a little kid, so I started crying. He was twisting my arm pretty good behind my back. So I always remember when I went into the courtroom, people were going, "Hey, tell that kid to be quiet and stuff." But I always remember when I was in that room and that agent was doing that to me. I always remember there was a native woman at the door, and she seen what was going on, and she started getting pretty verbal and tried to push her way in there. And that's when he took me and he pushed me into the courtroom. And that was one of my first incidents. And then when Leonard escaped in California, uh, we lived out in the country. And I remember my uncle that was married to my aunt, my native aunt from my mom's side. Uh, he was looking out the window and he goes, "Yeah, they're out there. They must be looking for Leonard." And I looked out the window, and there was 2 guys in unmarked cars again in suits. And I started getting scared again. And so when I went to school and stuff, I looked at the back of the bus and I seen them following me. And then when I was at the school, I remember seeing them walking around in the hall. And I had already knew what was going on with my father, that he'd escaped. And I figured they were watching me because I spent a lot of time with my father before I always say he got shanghaied, you know. Um, And so, yeah, it kind of worried me a little bit. And then they caught him. And I always remember hearing and reading how they told everybody that was looking for Leonard, the state police and everybody in California, not to bring him in alive. And I'm always been a firm believer in law and order. And I think the state trooper that day that didn't shoot Leonard, he brought him in. You know, he could have shot him, and he didn't. He just arrested him and brought him back. I'm sure he probably got harassed or a scolding from the people that told him to do what they wanted him to do. But I always think in my mind and pray and thank that state trooper for doing the right thing, you know. And then so then through my life, you know. Being with a mother and 2 kids. Me too. I had a little anger issues. Those situations never helped. Um, so like one time I got arrested, and uh, I always remember I was 17 years old, and I remember I was sitting there handcuffed, and I remember the police officer. I remember him moving the cameras, and me as I was a young dumb kid, I didn't know no better. And finally, he got to that third camera, and the next thing I knew, I woke up. He had knocked me out and was kicking me in the head, asking me how my cop killing father was doing. And I just laid there until he got tired of kicking on me. And finally, he got tired and then arrested me and put me in jail. And then, see, I was about 24 when the next incident happened, and it was just over a DUI. I always remember the 2 cops had me in the elevator. You had to go up 4 flights to the jail when you got arrested. And I always remember them stopping that elevator and beating the hell out of me, asking me how my cop killing father was doing. And I always remember when that door popped open, there was a Washington County sheriff there. He was just a huge black guy. I mean, he was a big guy, you know, and he was standing right in that doorway. And he reached in between those 2 cops and grabbed me and pulled me out of there. He knew something happened. And he asked me, "What happened in there? What's going on?" And I was kind of like, I was thinking in my mind, "Man, if you say anything, they're going to come and open that door a little bit later and give you some more." So I told him, I said, "Man, nothing happened." I said, "I fell down," I told him. And so I got through that incident. That was only a DUI. I got out, it was a couple days later, you know. And then, of course, getting in trouble again before, um, I always remembered um, the DAs and the police officers. I always had that kind of treatment from them. The DAs always wanted to throw me in prison because it was like a little notch on their back belt. And I remember one of the times when I went to court, one of the last times I went to court, uh, my attorney that I hired, when I went to when my attorney and the DA, I was lucky because the attorney I hired, he didn't know nothing about Leonard Peltier. I educated him about Leonard Peltier and stuff. But it turned out he used to be a DA in Washington County. And so when I told him, I said, you know, when I got bailed out of jail, because I'll tell you the truth, I got in a fight with a gang member that was trying to push drugs on my 16-year-old son. So we got in a physical application, and I got the best of him. But he had ran up and called the cops first. And I always remember when I got out of jail, I went back to the sheriff's office and I asked him, I said, hey, why this guy came to my house? What's the deal? He goes, well, if you would have called the cops, you would have never gotten in trouble. And I was kind of like, what? I go, that guy came to my house. He goes, yeah, but it's the first one that calls the cops. And I was kind of like, well, I wasn't raised to call the cops. And he says, well, no, you're the bad guy. And I'm kind of like, you know, that's bullshit. And he told me, he goes, you know, Chauncey, he goes, I knew this officer from before. And he had kind of helped me out before. He had knew me since I was a little kid because he used to own a drive-in there in Cornelius. So he had knew me pretty much all my life. And he told me, he said, you know, he goes, I ran that guy's record and I ran your record. He goes, all you've had is a few DUIs. He goes, that guy's had home invasion, drive-by shootings. He's a bad guy. He goes, he was mad at me because I didn't call the cops. He goes, I've been trying to get that guy for a long time. He says, you would have never got in trouble. And I was kind of, damn, you know, and he goes, but he goes, looking at your record and looking at his record, he goes, they'll throw this out of court. And I was kind of like, really? You think so? And he said, yeah, man, I guarantee it. And I thought, okay, so I'd left. But before I went to court, I knew better. I said, man, I think that time I sold my new pickup I had. I sold a bunch of tools I had, my chainsaws. And that's where I ran into this attorney that used to be a DA. And I hired him. It cost me 19, what was it, in 2004 or something? I'd paid him like $14,000. And so when we were going to court, well, no, before we went to court, I asked him, I said, hey, why don't that DA drop this? That sheriff down at Washington County said this, that he was going to throw this out of court because that guy had 10 times worse record than I do. And he goes, well, normally he would, but he's really interested in you because of who your father is. And I was kind of like, hold it. That's a rights. And then he kind of backed up and didn't want to say nothing no more. And I was going, that's a violation of my rights. I said, bullshit. You're not supposed to, that ain't supposed to affect my charges of all who you're related to. Well, he wanted me to drop that and let it go because they'd already worked a deal out. So when we went to go to court, we're walking into the courtroom and my attorney goes, hey, if that judge asks who your father is, he says, can I tell him who your father is? And I got upset. I said, what? I said, man, your buddy, the DA, wants to throw me in prison because who my father is. Now you want to tell the judge? And he said, well, the judge used to be a defense attorney. He goes, I believe it will help you. And I thought about it. And I really had a lot of trust in my attorney. And we're still friends today. And I said, really, you think so? And he goes, yes. And so I said, all right. I said, man, I'm trusting you with my life. And this was like a 7-year charge because I assaulted the guy that was trying to sell drugs to my kid. And so we go to court. And of course, the judge takes the DA and my attorney back to his room and they talk and they come back out in the courtroom and I'm sitting there and I'll tell you, man, I'm sweating. I was scared to go to prison. And the judge is sitting there and you know how they have their glasses down here and they're reading, and the DA, he goes to speak a couple times. Hey, no, I don't know how much. And the judge goes, nah, hold that. And then he asked my attorney a couple questions. And then the DA tried to talk and he told him. And finally, the judge asked me a couple questions. And it seemed like forever, but it probably wasn't more than 5 or 10 minutes. And finally, the judge come to the conclusion. He told him, he says, you know what? He goes, this guy's had his same job for 26 years. Right when he got out, he signed up for alcohol outpatient. Uh, he's already paid his fines. He's already did this. He's already did that. He says, I'm not throwing him in prison. He had actually, they wanted to fine me $10,000. The judge fined me $5,000, half of what my attorney and the DA had settled on. This judge gave me half. He only fined me $5,000 instead of 100 hours community service. He only gave me 40 hours community service. Instead of 5 years probation, he only gave me 2 years probation. He had literally cut it all in half. And even my attorney, he was kind of shocked. He's kind of what? And he says, I'm not going to throw this man in jail. And when he was all done, he says, you're free to go, Mr. Peltier. And I walked out that day. And I was literally expecting to go to prison, And then going into prison, I do prison work. I do religious services in prison. I'm just now starting to get back into it, but I did it for about 3 years. And they literally offered me a job as a chaplain a couple times. And I remember being in that prison and we'd go out to the sweat lodge and some of those native guys that were lifers and stuff would tell me, Chauncey, if you lived in here, we'd take care of you, And I'm kind of like, man, I really like going home. I'm glad I never lived here. And I told him, I said, being Leonard's son, I said, I was scared to death if I got in here, I might not ever get out of here. And the guard was sitting right there and listening. And I said, I'd be afraid that some guard would have it out for me because of who my father was and just start racking stuff up on me. And the guard looked and he shook his head and he goes, that's very possible, Chauncey. Because that guard, he always thanked me for going in there. And he was really nice to me. And me and him was always talking about cars and motorcycles and stuff. And he said, that's very possible that could happen to you. And he goes, but being who you are, he goes, they wouldn't send you in Oregon. They'd send you out of state. And I was kind of like, you mean they'd probably ship me out of the state to where my family couldn't visit me and stuff like they did to Leonard? And he was going, yes, they would. And then, so a lot of this, these instances that happened to me, I had finally got so discouraged and not discouraged, but tired of the harassment, the rights violation. I finally, and then I went 25 years one time without visiting Leonard. And I went and visited Leonard and, first he made me the director of the art. And then shortly after that, he had made me the director of Leonard Peltier Defense Committee during the Obama era. And before this, I had decided, I tried to go out there and live my own life and do my own thing. I don't know what I was supposed to do. I'd been married a couple times. I had literally thought about taking my wife's name, but I was so proud of my father and honored, that he's still fighting after all these years. I had decided, okay, you guys are the ones that pushed the buttons. You guys are the ones that kept dragging me in here. That's when I decided I was going to get involved and help in any way I can. And that's when I became the director of the art and the director of Leonard Peltier Defense Committee.
Well, it seems to me you turn the tables. You from what I've heard, you've gotten the bad end of the stick, but that hasn't stopped you from going and putting your time into not only activism, but activism where it really means your heart, working for prisoners and, making sure they get a taste of freedom. Because just like you, I bet a lot of them are in there because they've had a taste of the ingrained institutionalized racism that's kind of embedded in this country. And so, a shout out to you. And while I've still got a free time here, does anybody have any questions really quick? Well, going into activism stuff like that. Oh, I saw somebody unmuted.
Oh, I was just going to very quickly say thank you all for this great conversation. Hi, Chauncey. Sending you a lot of love from San Francisco down here. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to hop off soon to start an amnesty meeting, but these stories are so heartbreaking and frustrating, and it makes me so sad, and I just wanted to send love and appreciation for all that you endure, and then also that what you give back through the difficulties of your own life. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Lady D. Or is it G? I forgot. It's been a little while.
G for Gabriela, but it's good to see you.
I
Shout out
recognize.
to Amnesty International. Thanks for participating.
I
And that
recognize
actually
your
is a
voice.
great segue into my next question after we get Christine's.
I just wanted to say thank you for telling your story, Chauncey. And I was wondering how often you have contact with your father, and is he at all aware of the work you're doing on his behalf?
Yeah, I believe he's aware of the work. I still, his attorney, Kevin Sharp, keeps me informed a lot. And I like that because a lot of times his attorneys wouldn't give the family information. But I am so glad that Kevin Sharp hasn't got frustrated, and because I know he's ran into a lot of block walls and had to do he just couldn't believe the stuff that's going on, and it's been so discouraging for other attorneys that man, I love that man. I think he's the best. He's an amazing person. You hear about the work he's did, and I idolize him.
That's wonderful. Thank you. Thanks.
Shout out to Kevin Sharp. I heard he might have been here, but we're sending him our best all the same. So my question is can you kind of describe some more of your time at Peltier Justice or leading up to your most recent trip to Washington, D.C. with Amnesty International protesting outside the White House, which is 10 out of 10. I was following you all the way.
Well, when I left the Leonard Peltier Defense Committee, Leonard had switched board members after the Obama era, and he put some people on the new board that I didn't want to work with, and I had decided that I didn't want to work with those people too, because I'd had problems with them when I was the director of Leonard Peltier Defense Committee, and so I started. I thought, and I've heard of other people doing it, so I started my own support website group and everything. And so I decided to call it Peltier Justice. I don't know, it's kind of an odd name, but Leonard never received justice. And he deserves justice. That's kind of why I called it Leonard Peltier Justice. Because a couple of reasons. He had the right to a fair trial. He didn't deserve that. It was injustice that he got. But him, just like every American, deserves justice. And so that's how I kind of came up with Peltier Justice. And then the work I do, I've been to colleges, high schools. I'll go do speakings for Leonard. At events, anybody that's open to having me to an event. I always go and speak for Leonard. I try to educate people about Leonard's case. Um, I ask everybody to one of my goals is to ask everybody to write the parole board. I mean, Leonard's on number what, 4 or 5, 4 presidents. We're asking Joe Biden to grant clemency for Leonard. When Bill Clinton was the president, I think Leonard had 2 or 3 attorneys at the time, and they were in there talking to Bill Clinton, and he told them, you guys write up a release statement for Leonard. I'm going to send him home. And they were kind of like, what? And they said, yeah, write up a release statement for Leonard. I'm going to send him home. And so, of course, they got all excited, But then I heard from some pretty good sources when he did that, the FBI went in there and they said, if you release these 5 guys, that we couldn't protect you anymore. And so basically threatened him. The FBI is the reason Leonard Peltier is in prison. They had made a promise to, I believe they made a promise to the FBI agents' families that lost their father, their grandpa, their uncle, or whatever. And so whoever's still in the FBI after all these years is going to keep to that promise. They always send out a statement from the FBI, but nobody ever signs it. It's just a statement from the FBI. And I believe that's the reason Leonard's still in prison. Just like when I was the director of Leonard Peltier Defense Committee, I thought for sure Obama would release Leonard. He was a law professor. He was a minority. I mean, it was just all there for him, and he didn't do it, so that's why I worry about Joe Biden releasing Leonard. I pray every day that he does. If he's a firm believer in law and order and believes the justice system, I believe that he'll release Leonard, but he's probably going to get the same harassment that other presidents did. So my deal is I support all the petitions to send to Joe Biden. I support what the Democrats are doing, everybody all over the country. But if you listen to one of Kevin Sharp's interviews, he says at Leonard's last parole board, which I never knew until I heard Kevin Sharp say it, that when Leonard was in front of the parole board, that one of the parole board guys said that he was going to release Leonard. He'd been following this case for a long time and believed that Leonard should be paroled. And before he could do that, he had the FBI went in there and replaced him with somebody that wouldn't. So I mean, that's why I always ask everybody to write the parole board. And boy, if we could get a couple million letters into I know that's a lot. It takes some time out of people's lives. But Leonard's gave 48 years on one of the biggest rights violation cases, one of the longest held political prisoners in this so-called free country. So I mean, so many supporters. I know he's got over 1 million supporters out there. If we was to take 20 minutes, 25 minutes out of our time and write the parole board, sign these clemencies, maybe we could convince them to do it. That's one thing I've been working on that I would hope. Hopefully he would get paroled or clemency, and he wouldn't have to mess with the parole board when he got out, because like Leonard said himself in statements, everybody's said that he's in jail now for aiding abetting. Aiding abetting, his other 2 accomplices got acquitted. So who is he in there for aiding abetting? He's did 48 years for aiding abetting. And if the parole board don't think that he should be released, maybe they don't respect law and order. You know, they signed a commitment just like the military, the police, and everybody when they decide to become parole board people members. And so if they can't support the freedom for Leonard Peltier, maybe that's not the job for him. And that goes to back to the president and anybody else that's fighting to keep Leonard in prison. The justice system in America is it don't apply to everybody. You know, there used to be white privilege, and a lot of people get mad at when people say that. But now, if you look back, it's starting to switch. It ain't white privilege anymore. This is happening to a lot of white people. Now it is money privilege. If you have money, you could buy yourself out of anything. People with money have all the power. Corporations run this country. That's what runs us. That's the privilege nowadays is corporations. The tax papers, what is it, 300 million people in this country? And what is it, 25, 40% of them might be the rich people, and the other 75, 60% are the working average middle class that pay those taxes for those people to have their jobs, the politicians. That's so the taxpayers are the ones that are taking it in the shorts because what we say and what we want has no say no more. You know what I mean? And so that's why I believe too that since I seen when I do this prison work, one of the last times I went to the car and bike show with the Leonard Peltier bike, and I asked the Lakota chief, I said, go get the president of the white guys, the black guys, the Asian guys, the Mexican guys. And when they all came over, I showed them the Leonard Peltier bike. And I said, you know, this bike just don't represent Leonard Peltier. This bike represents the injustice that we've all got. When we were only supposed to get 5 years and we're getting 5 and 15 years. When we go to court, when we only have 1 or 2 charges and they're racking them up, we got 5 or 6 charges on us when we go to court. That ain't the system that a lot of veterans went and fought and died for in this country. And us middle class people are the ones that are taking that in the shorts. And that's exactly where Leonard's at. Leonard's somebody they could just brush under the rug, which they've had for 48 years. And that ain't right. That ain't the justice system a lot of these veterans fought and died for. So that's when people stand up and they want to say the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag and they want to say justice for all. That's where I stop. So
And a
that's,
shout out to Lady G in our comment section. With the flick of a pen, Biden could do all of this.
yes, it wouldn't take Biden but a couple minutes to sign that clemency and let Leonard go home. Leonard's told me when I would visit him that, you know, and I believe this is because of his incarceration for so long, that he would just go to his property. He would build a house. He'd like to build a shop and just work on old cars and paint. And he said he'd probably never go anywhere. If anybody ever wanted to visit him, they would have to come here. He's told me that before, you know, and I mean, his health issues and all that probably applies to that now. But even when he was younger, I felt that's how he had felt. It was 5 years ago he told me that. So I mean, I believe that's part of the incarceration that's made him think like that and be like that, you know. And then then if he's out traveling around, what kind of harassment is Leonard going to take? You know what I mean? From the FBI, from cops that still thinks he's a murderer, just different issues. It'd probably be the safest place for him, you know. So that's all he wants to do is go home, you know.
And I was going to ask about what we could do here in Douglas County, but I think you already answered that question of, we can write that parole board. We can not let up in our activism, because I know we at the county party passed a resolution, and I know the feds did. So if we just don't keep beating that drum, squeaky gear gets greased. Got to always keep going on. So with saying that, my question to you is, do you have some contact info for that parole board? So maybe we can kind of get that stuff circulated.
Yeah, I do have that info on my computer somewhere. It's been a while since I'm pretty sure it's on peltierjustice.com.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll figure it out, and we'll circulate it, because I know we've got your back, and we'll start the petition. We'll start the letters.
And then when I do this work for Leonard, before I'd start Peltier Justice, I'm a retired hod carrier. I was a hod carrier for 35 years. I worked under a brick mason, so that's pretty physically hard work. I was a logger too, so my health, I don't get around as good as I used to. But a lot of that money with Peltier Justice, that's how I support Leonard. That's Amnesty International had paid for me to go to Washington, D.C., put me up in a room, paid for my food. Amnesty International is just amazing, and they're incredible supporters of my father. And I really thank them for what they do for my father, because there was a lot of people there, and there was a lot of support there that day at the White House. Probably 15 people walked out of the White House and stood there in front of the White House and watched all the protesters out there. And finally, they shut the street down, so we all had to walk back up into the park and get off the street. And you guys probably seen videos of all the secret services up there. Well, there's probably about 20, 25 guys that backed up to the gate of the White House with a Free Leonard Peltier sign, and they got arrested. And they all went peaceably. They wrote them a ticket. They let them go. I was pretty concerned about that, because a lot of years people supported Leonard. There was never no violence, no people getting arrested. My father didn't support that, people getting arrested and hurt. That's one of the things he didn't want. So it was nice that it all went peacefully and all that. They had attorneys set to the side bail money for those guys that did that, and you never heard about that on the news. They want to keep that quiet, see. But that should have been all over the news. You hear about all kinds of other cases and that happening all over at the White House, but you sure didn't hear about that Leonard Peltier case over there in D.C., September 12th. I think Indian Collective, Amnesty, and other support groups like that were the ones that put it out. But I never heard about it on the news. Anybody that I talked to about and mentioned it to, and all the people that follow me, nobody ever told me they heard that on the news. If they did, it wasn't very much at all. So this is a case that they still want to keep quiet, and they still want people to not be educated about it. My sister, her grandson the other day, they called me up, and he told me at school his history teacher was teaching him about Leonard Peltier. And I was kind of like, really? I said, that's good. I had a veteran that owned a stump grinding business come up here a month ago. And he's a veteran, a combat veteran. And he didn't even know who I was. And he noticed that I was Native and everything. And we were talking. And he asked me if I'd ever heard about Leonard Peltier. And I was kind of like, yeah, I've heard about Leonard Peltier. So I let him tell me. And he said, I learned about Leonard Peltier a long time ago in school. And I was kind of like, really? He goes, yeah. So when we got to talking, he was done telling me, I said, well, I got a big surprise for you. And he's kind of like, yeah. So I brought him in there and I showed him the Leonard Peltier art. I showed him all my banners in my shop. And he's a real supporter of Leonard's freedom. He's a combat veteran. Um, he would like to see Leonard go free. I volunteered down at the VA, and so many veterans down there tell me that it's just crazy that Leonard's still in prison. That ain't why they signed up and fought for this country. They're the ones that's told me that. That ain't from me. That's from actual veterans. I remember one time when I was the director of Leonard Peltier Defense Committee and I was in Florida, and all these motorcycles come pulled up there. And I was kind of like, wow, because I'm a motorcycle guy and I'm looking, and pretty soon I see them all down there pointing towards me to those guys on bikes. I'm thinking, what the hell? Did I cut one of these guys off or something? So they all come up to my booth, and they're kind of like, well, it's a veteran motorcycle club. And they heard I was there. They wanted to come and talk to me. They were supporters of Leonard Peltier. And I was kind of like, wow, man, thank you guys. And those guys told me the same thing that veteran the other day told me. So, I mean, how far are they going to let this go? You know, it's time for justice. It's time for Leonard to go home. It's crazy. He's using a walker now. He's using oxygen. His health you don't get very good health in prison, in a maximum security federal prison. He's 76 years old and still in a maximum security prison, Coleman, Florida. Has anybody ever been there? I have. That's a nasty place. That's a bad place. One of the last times I was there visiting my father, I was in the visiting room, and some young gangster over there is looking at me in the visiting room, and he was an inmate, trying to pick a fight with me. And I just kind of looked the other way, and I thought, man, he's going to be messing with dad later, And so, I mean, that's a very horrible, nasty place he's at. He's been asking for years to get moved back to Minnesota to a medium security prison where he can get some better health care. And they keep denying him on that. I mean, they're still violating his rights today. People don't realize that he falls under the 1980 federal guideline laws, to where the years he's supposed to be set free. His health issues, he's supposed to be set free. And that still applies today. They are still violating his rights today.
And it's through the good work of, the NDN, and Amnesty International. Like you were talking about the great protest in DC, I was out on bedrock fire, fighting wildland fire, 100 miles from anything, when I got a call on my cell phone from Amnesty International asking if I'd signed the Leonard Peltier petition. And it's through great work of activists, really, the people that want to get involved and know that this is a core issue at their heart of hearts. We've been getting a lot of links through our chat, so I just want to give a shout out to everybody to go sign those petitions and go through those links. Those are our action viewpoints for today. We are not the stand there and just sit on our hill and cry party. We are if we have a solution, we're going to at least try to follow through here in Douglas County. So please sign those petitions. If you're live streaming, they will be coming in the chat box also, so look out for those. Wow. I'm 22, and I come from another poor rural family in Oregon, so I hear the cries and the injustice, because you're right. It's bigger than just our ingrained racism, which is terrible, which is something that needs to be addressed. It's almost a classism issue. The 99% the issues back in the 2010s are still relevant as they have always been. Do I have any more questions or anything else like that?
I have to sign off, so I just want to thank all of you so much, and Christine for inviting me, and just lots of love, gratitude, free Leonard, and hugs and appreciation all around. Thanks so much for, I'm so glad that I was invited to this, and take good care.
Thank you.
Thank you for showing up. Exactly.
Well, the great thing about this, this kind of venue is even if there's not a lot of people watching it initially, there's a potential for a lot of people to watch it and participate. And particularly I'm going to focus on people in the Democratic Party, like the Democratic National Committee, actually a year ago passed a resolution, and the one we did locally was adapted heavily from that one. And so any Democratic Party in Oregon can do the same, or in any other state can do the same and push it up through their state party, because that may be that, particularly in an election year, and people have different opinions, but in an election year when Biden is has a challenger that's significant, this may be the prime time to really have Democrats, particularly the people, the voters, if he thinks that this is this issue for people, that are solid voters for him, or thinks he can rely on, that might give more pressure, right? Really, to make him do the right thing. But I also see the value of doing the whatever we can do. So if you have information, our local Democratic Party can do that. Anybody can get, any of the Democrat Party can get a copy of our resolution. It's actually in some, I'll post it in the chat as well. And so anyway, so that's kind of what our hope is that this is part of it. The reason that I support our local party doing these online community events, because the potential audience is great for this. And thank you very much, Chauncey, for being here, telling your story, your dad's story.
Yeah, I want to say before we shut it down and everything that you just don't have to. There are so many other people out there, Democrats, Republicans, independent people that support Leonard. I've always been a firm believer in law and order, even after the incidents that happened to me in my lifetime. If we didn't have law and order, this would be a crazy world. So I mean, that's why I always ask anybody, that believes that justice should be done right, that's a firm believer in law and order, sign these petitions. Write the parole board a letter. Leonard deserves to go home. It's way past time. There was some other stuff. And one thing I always like to say is I always like to thank the supporters supporting Leonard all these years, is because I believe you guys are the ones that's kept him strong. All you supporters kept him strong, sending him letters, fighting for his freedom. That gives anybody encouragement. So I believe that you supporters are the ones that's really helped him stay strong in his struggle for freedom. And I always want to thank you guys, and I thank you guys from my heart very much, for the support of my father's wrongfully incarceration and 48 years of wasted life for one of the biggest rights violation cases in U.S. history. So if it wasn't for you supporters, I don't know if Leonard would still be fighting for freedom. So I want to thank you guys.
Well, thank you, Chauncey. I know I've gotten to know and work with you a bunch since since we've been introduced when I was working on your property. you know, and now look at us. It's
Yeah.
been really, you know, you're one of my heroes, Chauncey, and that's for sure.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I'm going to give this off to Betsy for our last little spiel.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Kevin, Betsy. Thank you to Democrats of Oregon, Douglas County, for supporting my father. That means so much to the family. And I really thank you guys from my heart. Thank you.
Yeah, and I just want to mention that we're going to do some other community discussions, probably have the Rural Organizing Project in January, and Reverend Howard Johnson will be doing a hybrid meeting for Black History Month in the second Saturday in February. And so information will be sent out. Our newsletter will be on the Facebook page. And if people have ideas about that, what they want to talk about, what they want to, have more information about, let us know. And thanks to everybody for being here. Thanks, Kevin. Thanks, Chauncey.
Thank
Thanks
you.
everybody for showing up. I think this was a really great first community forum, and I look forward to seeing you all here for the many more to come. Bye.
Good night, everyone.